It's not showing anything yet. It's still showing a runaround pond or something. So I'm not getting any,
No, we should have a little monitor.
yeah, there is, but I'm not
Doesn't
sure it can
necessarily
tell you if it's
recognize
actually,
the audio.
what's that?
It doesn't necessarily.
Yeah, I
recognize
don't know
audio.
that it,
Says it's streaming.
okay, it just started, there we go. It is streaming. Let's see if
And your mic's still on.
mine's still spinning. It's working, George.
Okay, good.
So I'm not getting any. Okay, we got that, John, there we go. Yeah, grab all of those, I don't know. Mike only needs one speaker. Does everybody know Michael Finley? He is conservation guru extraordinaire.
Yeah, I wish.
Well,
Thank you.
member of the.
Very knowledgeable.
Very knowledgeable. Member of the Conservation Commission, lives on Runaround Pond. Part of the soul and conscience of the town. One more minute. Are you like the Stuckey to attend all meetings?
I volunteer.
You're a good man.
I thought it'd be good to sort of have consistency, at least we know what you're doing and you know what we're doing.
Yeah, yours next week, right? Your meeting?
The third Wednesday, so
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Close enough. I'll take out the agenda here. Thank you for everybody who's come. Okay, so welcome to the planning board meeting, regular meeting on Wednesday, September 4th, the year 2024. First thing on our agenda is a determination of a quorum. All members are present, so we have a quorum. Next thing is a pledge of allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Do we have any amendments to this evening's agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on to acceptance of minutes, meeting minutes from both the 5th of June and the 10th of July.
Actually, it should be the August.
Should be.
Yeah, okay, yeah, so it is, I'm sorry, it is meeting minutes. It just, where it says acceptance of, we'll change it from June 5th to July 10th to August 7th, and the attachment is in fact August 7th. Anybody have any comments on the August 7th minutes? Changes desired or otherwise? Seeing none, I'll take a motion to accept.
I'll make that motion.
Juliet has motioned.
Second.
Alan has seconded. Any additional comment? Seeing none, please raise a hand to approve. 5-0. Next item is, so the meeting, the minutes are accepted. Next item is the informational exchange on non-agenda items. And we'll start with town officials. Mr. Thabarge.
The Community Center Facilities Steering Committee did meet on August 26th and just got the ball rolling on that project to look at coming up with a long-term vision for the town offices, the Eureka, the fire station, and the ball field. Just kind of looking at these facilities. What are some of the challenges that have been consistently brought up about these buildings, and what is the long-term future? Kind of like a comprehensive plan for these facilities. And so they just started the process, introduced the members. Greater Portland Council of Governments is facilitating that process, and we're hoping that it can produce a long-term vision that the community can grab a hold of. They will be preparing an engagement process, looking at having a couple of stakeholder meetings We've identified obviously the town office staff, the Eureka volunteers, the fire department personnel, the various civic groups within the community. So try to get, and neighbors in particular would be affected by the future, what happens on these properties. So just look at getting some community engagement and talk about, what are people's concerns about these properties and what would they like to see happen with them. And just kind of see where it goes if a vision can come together with community support for the futures. Because just my experience since I've been working here 6 years is that it's all crisis management for each of these properties. It's when pipes break over at Eureka, or we can't get the technology going here. They look at putting internet over to across the street to Eureka. And it's all just crisis management decisions, and that's obviously not a good way to approach stewardship of municipal assets. So hopefully this will just start a process where people start looking forward beyond the next crisis, and it really helps you make better financial decisions when you do make investments, as opposed to just slapping Band-Aid solutions on problems that could have better solutions if you had a better plan. So that's the process. It'll be happening over the next few months. They hope to wrap up that project by February. So that's on the way. Any
sorry,
questions about that?
Yeah, will that be on is that a vote at the meeting, town meeting or anything like that?
No, not at this point, unless
Yeah.
something comes out of it.
Yeah, it'll just be a plan.
Yeah,
That-
it's just gonna be a starting point
Yeah.
for future discussions and projects. One of the goals is to see if we could come up with a plan for changing the intersection out here and get that to DOT to possibly get some movement on their part. The Eureka Center they've talked about putting a foundation under it. And if you do that, if you move it away from that intersection when you do it, which is a cheaper way to put a foundation under it, then you can open that up for DOT to really do a good realignment of that intersection and fix it, because it's difficult right now. So those are the types of things that could lead to a formal request to DOT to look at that. There may be some facility grants for various improvements that are available if the town has a shovel-ready plan project. And so it just would put the town in a much better position to plan its capital improvements and take advantage of funding opportunities when they arise, as opposed to if you don't have a plan and you go to apply for a grant, you don't even have a chance of getting the funding. So that's kind of what we're looking at.
Question, if I may.
So I would just encourage all of you planning board members to start thinking about this in terms of you've experienced some of the challenges of these facilities, and you'll have been identified as a stakeholder group, along with the other boards and committees that have to deal with these technology issues and meeting issues, and so your input would be very, very important. Go ahead, Brian. Sorry.
I'm embarrassed that I don't know this, but does the town own the property on the corner of 9 and 136 here?
No, it does not.
On
I
this
believe
side of
that's
the road.
owned by
Yeah,
the.
no,
I think it's the owners of the Get and Go.
It is.
It is.
It's the same property
I
owner.
mean, where
And-
that thing is, what do you call it? That,
No. This just started out here on the
Right here,
corner.
right on
The
this
empty
corner
land right
here.
behind us.
oh,
On the
okay.
left-hand side, yeah.
Yeah, and they did approach me a few years ago about their plans for that property.
That's what I recall. That's what I wanted
Yeah,
to
but
get a good
I
sense.
haven't had any follow-up, and I did try to reach out and tell them about this process, but never got a response, so.
Mm.
And at some point, we'll send out notice again, maybe they'll get involved.
Yeah, they have major interest in it.
Right, yep.
So all these steering committee meetings, are they on the town calendar?
I should be, yeah. We've only had one,
Right.
yeah.
And
that-
what's the
I mean,
anticipation
pretty sure.
of meeting times and how often?
We're just putting the schedule together now, so we've talked about having a daytime steering committee meeting, or steering committee stakeholder group outreach, and then one evening one, just to recognize the limitations of staff time and consultant time. So give those two opportunities for public input, and basically invite all of the stakeholder groups to attend one or the other. to make it available to folks who want to meet during the day, feel more comfortable with doing that, or people that have busy schedules and want to meet at night, and give those opportunities. They're also talking about doing a survey online, like we did for the comprehensive plan, to just get ideas for what people, again, what they'd like to see in the future here and what they don't like.
Just recommendation, you might want to, if not broadcast it live, stream it live, tape it if it's a daytime thing, because
Sure.
you're going to miss a lot of people
Yep.
doing it that way. Anything else? Any other questions for?
So, and then just an update, the Resource Protection Working Group wrapped up its work last week, August 28th, and I'll be doing a presentation tonight of what that group is recommending. And then finally, the update on the codification. The consultants sent us a proposed new outline for the land use ordinance. Not a big change, but some improvements to make it more standardized in terms of where things are located within the ordinance, and a new numbering system to follow their standard formatting for the digital version that's going to be online. They're now going to start, and have actually started, the legal review. They have legal consultants that do this, and they've done lots of ordinances all over the country, and 30 or so here in Maine. So they'll be doing a review to look at problematic areas, many of which we've talked about in the past, such as this issue of expanding non-conforming buildings. What's in Article 16 right now probably does not comply with state law, and there are many other sections as well. So they'll be looking at that, and they'll be flagging problem areas, and for simple ones, they'll give examples of fixes that we could look at and tweak to fit or tailor to fit Durham's program. Their target, they started on August 6th, and they're saying it takes 180 days to do their process. And so that puts us at the end of January. So it'll be tight, but it is possible that that could be ready for the April 25 town meeting. So what I've talked about with the town manager and other department heads is us getting together, and rather than waiting until they do that whole process, going down through issues that we've come upon time after time and flag those and make sure that the codification product addresses those issues, and if not, try to get movement on those sorts of things. You know, we've talked about the problems of where currently we have the planning board reviewing maintenance agreements for private roads, but you don't get to review the road. It's just those sorts of things. How can we better align the policies so that we don't have that type of confusion, and try to get better efficiency? So that's all happening. And again, I encourage planning board members, if there are things that you see in the ordinances that just don't make sense and that you've seen the need to change something, then we're going to start compiling a list, and then we'll be presenting those to the consultants and trying to work those into the process as well, if they miss them.
And when you say ready for the town meeting, what exactly?
Well,
gonna be ready.
if they come back with a workable proposed overhaul of the land use ordinance in this new digital format, it's pretty much, we have the town attorney look at it, and she checks everything and against what their experience is, everybody's on the same page, then, and again, hopefully it won't raise big policy issues like the ones we're dealing with. So it would be a matter of housekeeping and improvements. So it would be, at that point, if they are not done until the end of January, then it'll have to really be simple and move quickly to get on the warrants for and meet all of the statutory deadlines for dealing. But it is possibly doable. It's a stretch, but you know, other than that, you wait another year before you get your codification implemented. So
We could also like break some stuff up too, depending on what they get back to us with, right? The easy stuff, maybe add it to the warrant. Other stuff that might take more time, we could push it out.
well, I think the whole overhaul of the new framework for the land use ordinance will be, you know, it's really kind of an all or nothing. You can't have their renumbering system.
Yeah, what I'm looking at it like is the renumbering is one part of it, and then the review of the content is another, right? Like if we can get the renumbering piece at least, and then more of the content, see where that ends up.
Yeah, and
But-
again, a lot of it will just be cleaning up
Yeah.
stuff that's messed.
Yeah,
And then
Yeah.
when you do that, there may or may not be, and you, like you're saying, you could put off the real.
depending what they come back with,
Yeah,
yeah,
if there are issues like private roads.
right.
There was a big debate on whether those private roads should be paved or left gravel. That kind of put a stall on the update we were trying to do. So any of those policy issues would be something that you could put off, but at least come up with, now you know what they all are. And
Yeah.
you could start to prioritize and start fixing those things sequentially.
So we would have to, let's assume it is ready to get, you know, they hand it off to the town in January. At some point in time, we'd have to run a public hearing on it,
Yes.
I believe, and then
Yep,
select board would say, yes, this is what we want to put on the, I mean, a public, let me rephrase that, public information meeting, select board says, this is what we want you to, is gonna want to go on the warrant, public hearing, and then the town
and
meeting.
again, that will depend, I mean, are people, you're gonna want to have a public meeting just to say,
Right.
oh, there's a new
We're changing
there's
this
a new
number
numbering
from this
system.
to this,
Um,
yeah,
And we're cleaning up some of these legal problems and some of these wording problems. You know, again, in order to meet the time frame of getting this on the town meeting warrant, and you can, and the select board, you and the select board can decide, you know, is this ready to roll? If it's not, then, and you will be having a public hearing to educate people on what's involved in it.
Yeah,
So-
I would, my concern would be showing up at the town meeting and saying, here's the new land use code in
No,
any given
no,
form.
you couldn't do that.
Couldn't do that.
no, we would
In
just.
February,
We
you'd
would,
have to
yeah.
get it to the select board, have it on the town meeting warrant articles, send it out in the town report, and put it on the website, so there'd be plenty of, you know,
Right.
not as much opportunity as some of these policy issues. But it wouldn't be like, come in at the town meeting and spring it on them.
No, I mean, well, I guess it depends on what we got in January and we're ready to go with it, so.
Yeah, and they may come in earlier, that'd be great if they get it in the
That's,
first of
it's
January.
much faster, I mean, originally, weren't they talking like 2 years to get this done? Am
Well,
I-
again, it all depends on what you wanna do, like they're saying is that, look, the first part, what we're doing right now takes a year, and then you start weaving your new policies into it in the second year, I think, might be why they say 18 months. But we'll find out.
And the contract that we have now ends with that phase one, that, you know, the restructuring of it, is that what's covered?
I'm not sure off the top of my head, I mean,
Okay.
they're certainly not going to pour into issues like we're pouring
Yeah.
into
Gotcha.
on this small amount.
They'll probably like flag it. and-
Yeah, they'll
and,
flag
you
it
know,
and then let you take it from there.
Yeah.
Is that contract public? Like, I'm just wondering what the deliverables are and when their deadline is.
I can certainly provide that to you.
It has to be public.
Yeah, the select board voted on it at a meeting, so I'm sure.
So that was a fiscal year thing, so they allotted money for this fiscal year.
Well, the select board,
So
I mean,
far.
the town meeting earmarked 12,000, something like that for it. I can't remember the exact amount. And then the select board had a meeting they did an RFP, and so all of that is in the public records of the select board in approving the contract. So all those terms are there.
Are you asking to, it sounds like George could provide the contract if you wanted to, if you were interested in it.
Yeah, I'd like to read it just to see what we're expected to see.
Yeah.
And when the deadline is for the deliverables, and, I mean, that might answer a lot of questions as far as what we're expecting to see by January or to have in hand before the town meeting.
That is a good question. I should remember, but I can't remember what the funding was, annual or, I just don't. I don't
Well, no,
remember.
there were two parts of it. First was to do the overhaul, and then put it on the web, and then they do annual maintenance of that, and they gave amounts for that. So what happens is, once you get on their program, every year, instead of paying me to do all my manual updates that I do, you'd basically provide them with your drafts of amendments, and they would process that and publish it in the new ordinance every time. And then there's a track record of every change that's made from going here forward, and they're gonna index those changes over time, so you can tell. I've got kind of an informal system of earmarking changes that we're making. This would be much more, and searchable. That's the thing, you can go back and say fireworks, type in, and it'll tell you everything to do with fireworks in that ordinance and when any changes were made, those sorts of things.
Any other questions on codification?
And I will send you the proposal, all of you.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
George, anything else, codification?
Nope, that's it.
Okay, if, the next one would be residents' public comment will be taken. Michael, would you like to talk about where the Conservation Commission is on so just give us a real quick update on where you are?
With-
If cut the solar, one of the things that was, on the agenda to be started this year was the
Right.
expansion of the solar thing. Could you, if you don't mind, I'm gonna make you come to the front, please.
Not to put you on the spot or anything.
Not,
I did volunteers. It's my own fault. We're not going to bring anything to the town vote until not this April, but
2026.
2026. What we're trying to do is make a map of resources that we want to try and protect and where we want to site solar. So some of those things are farmland and intact forests. We charted where the three-phase electrical wiring in Durham is. It's pretty limited. So that might affect where companies want to build. We're sort of still discussing whether we want to have some sort of fee structure to try and sort of use a carrot to encourage solar companies to build in less sort of sensitive areas, but we really haven't firmed anything up.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions? I mean, they've been working on it, and so I think still early yet.
Yeah, I've been attending some of the meetings, and it's great work that you're doing,
Thank you.
yeah.
Yep, and thank you.
Sure.
Okay, so any other residents that I don't see? Non-residents, public comment will be taken. Seeing no non-residents, we're through with informational. Continuing business, none, there's none on the list. So new business. So completeness review of preliminary plan, application of proposed phase 2 of Bowie Hill subdivision map 10, lot 38. Public comment will not be taken. I guess I would start it off with, I think we are where we were last month, and the developer asked for an extension, and we granted it. If I have studied it correctly, and George put together some great notes, I'm not sure much of anything has been done since then, or at least not provided to us since then. And so I don't, I'm not sure we can do we can rule it complete or vote on it complete. So,
I was comment here. Does it make sense for us to table this until they're here? Like the applicant?
my feeling is that, no. I mean,
Okay.
the reason, Juliet, is that they haven't done anything in a month.
Yeah,
And so what I would say is what we have before us is, in my opinion, incomplete. And my
sorry,
recommendation.
incomplete.
And so what I will make a motion on is that we rule it as incomplete and provide them the letter. George has got a copy of that.
Sorry,
Yeah.
apologies, that makes sense.
And
I thought-
then-
okay.
And and they didn't ask for an extension, but even if they had, I would still, I think, recommend the incomplete letter, because that's a formal, okay, it's not complete, there's no, you're not extending this, we're telling you it's not
Got it.
complete. And so, and it has no, George can correct me if I'm wrong, it has no negative impact on timing. They can still get everything done and into us, and we could hear it next month. It's not like you have to wait 6 months
Yeah.
after the letter to do it, I think, or 2 months or whatever. So that's my feeling on it without going into a lot of discussion, but I will open it up to just, discussion.
I would make a motion with what you just said.
Okay?
I
That we
agree.
do the letter of incompletion.
Incomplete letter,
Do I
yeah.
have a second?
I would second that.
It's been moved by Juliet, seconded by Mark. Any further discussion?
Yes. Okay, your packet on page,
Damn, George, I thought we were gonna get through this quickly.
well, you will. I think it's on page 160, has the actual draft letter of incomplete application.
Mhm.
So I think it'd be important for the board to reference that draft.
Okay.
And just, I'll just run down quickly the items that they need to address. The first is they have not paid any application or escrow fees. Their form, as we pointed out at the last meeting, notes is woefully incomplete and inaccurate. They need a location map on the subdivision plan with the required information. It should be labeled as a preliminary subdivision plan per the ordinance with a complete title block with map and lot number. They did not submit a survey plan by the registered surveyor, which is on the checklist. They did not provide septic system logs for that outlier lot on Bowie Hill Road, lot 26. They did not, on their preliminary subdivision plan as required by the ordinance, include the names and addresses of all adjoining landowners. They did not include the existing buildings on lots in phase 1, and they did not indicate on the draft preliminary plan the cleared areas for each of the lots. So those are all the deficiency that I picked up in the initial review of their application.
Having heard that, Juliet, would you amend your motion to include the draft letter provided in our package?
Would I amend my motion?
Yes.
I
That
don't
way-
think so. I was just looking back at my notes, I'm sure, George, you got everything, but I think I made a note of stuff, but, no, I don't want to amend it at this time.
Okay, you don't want to amend it.
Right?
What we're trying to do is reference the.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, just
I do want to amend this, okay. I want to amend to say that the motion is to approve sending out the incomplete application notice per what George just listed out, all of the items, 6.6B through 6.7.
As included in the agenda packet.
C23, yeah, as included in the agenda. Yep.
Okay, would you second her amended motion?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded for the amended motion to send the notice of completion letter. Any further discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise a hand. It is unanimous. And Mr. Tabarge, if you would kindly send that out to him.
I will.
So I believe then, going back to my agenda, that completes the new business A. And other business is planning board discussion of land use policy issues for next town meeting. Again, public comment will not be taken. With, I guess, one exception, since he is here, Mike's been very involved in the discussion. And if you're willing, would like you to kind of, as we're discussing this, join in, give us your thoughts, officially or otherwise, for the Conservation Commission. Are you okay with that?
Sure.
Okay, you can, we're gonna do battery storage first, but you're welcome to join us now. But your mic is on, so no mumbling. So battery storage systems, Mr. Tabarge, please, if you want to give a quick introduction to that.
Yes, John, I'll be happy to.
Excellent.
So, as we have discussed in the past, and as the board indicated, I think at the last meeting, you want to make a formal recommendation to the select board to put forth a moratorium ordinance on battery energy storage systems for the April 2025 town meeting. The concerns are noted in the draft ordinance that's included in your packet, and I've got it up on the screen if you want to discuss any of it. Probably the bulk of it, in addition to recognizing the capacity limitations of Durham's organizational structure to deal with these types of projects of the magnitude and the complexity. The town is really not prepared to deal with a system like was just approved by the Gorham Planning Board, 5 acres of batteries. These batteries are the size of a boxcar, and I'm not sure how many, 150 or something of those in that facility next to the energy plant there in Westbrook. So this will give the town an opportunity. And also, as I noted in the past meetings, I did include and will include as an attachment the report of the New York interagency working group on the safety of these facilities. That report was released in January of this year, and they noted that 3 of these facilities had major fires in New York, which led their governor to basically form this interagency working group. And many of the recommendations that were in that report I've summarized for the draft moratorium ordinance. And it gives you a
report that was in our last package.
Yes.
Okay.
And so what I've done is taken each of those points from that report and put it into this as a summary point, identifying some of the issues that they have had with these facilities, and that providing the basis for saying Durham really needs to carefully review these facilities and its ordinances and its infrastructure and services to make sure that if one of these is proposed in Durham, that the town is in a position to deal with the application effectively. So this was based, this draft was based on the model provided by Maine Municipal Association, which interestingly enough used Durham from something around 2000, where the town did a moratorium, and it used that moratorium as an example of towns doing moratoriums in compliance with state law. So I basically took that template and put this information into it. It calls for an initial 6-month moratorium, and then under law and under the terms of this draft ordinance, the select board would be able to extend it for an additional 6 months. And we've talked conceptually about the first 6 months being to dig it deep into these issues and see whether this is something the town could possibly accommodate from an economic development standpoint and alternative energy, but at the same time it would helpfully frame the issues that need to be addressed in an ordinance. And then the town, at the end of the 6 months, the select board can say, well, based on this study, and hopefully form some kind of a working group or study group of citizens with staff assistance and possibly a consultant to look at these issues and prepare a report that gives the pros and the cons, the issues to be addressed. And then if it's a go, to say yes, if all of these safety problems could be addressed, then it would be an economic benefit for the town to have one of these big facilities in terms of tax generation. Looking at what other towns have benefited from these, then the town could say, let's go forward with drafting an ordinance that will effectively regulate these things and put in all the safety requirements and service requirements that the developer would have to provide to protect these things, as opposed to the town. Or if the town, part of that would be a public participation, and if from a rural character, this is not Gorham, it does not have industrial parks. Just from a land use standpoint, you may say these really do not fit in the town. And then you could draft an ordinance that would maybe allow, and this draft actually does exempt like a home-based battery energy storage system. So if someone has solar panels and they want to have a small storage system for that's exempted from this, which is one of the things we'll need to discuss. Do you want to have a moratorium on all battery energy storage systems, or just the very large projects like Gorham. And we can change the wording of this to accordingly, but this is the starting place of a template for that. I have provided this to the town attorney and asked her to take a look at it. So I'm sure the retroactivity clause of it probably needs some work. I just took a stab, put it in there as kind of a placeholder. So to meet legal requirements to have it retroactive from the April town meeting back to whenever someone might submit an application.
Right.
There are things you need to do to make sure that it can be applied retroactively, and we'll ask the town attorney to give us help with that. So, coconut shell, that's it.
I got some items. Did you want to go first, John?
No, go ahead.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay. So 3 items. One, the last thing you mentioned, home-based storage. I don't think we want to prohibit those, right? Like I'm thinking of just, someone has solar on their roof and they want to add a battery to capture that, maybe for EV, whatever, right? We're not talking that.
Doesn't that deal with size of storage?
Yeah, I think
Right,
so, but
You talked about the size.
Yeah, the
in some way.
language that I got from, I looked at several moratoriums in New
Okay.
York.
okay.
I mean, they've got a slew of them.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
probably the most, and some did tier 1, tier 2, which was, I can't remember how many 100 kilowatt hours. But the one of them had 25, which is,
Yeah.
I understand, is about a single home.
Okay.
And so I grabbed that
Okay.
as a starting place for exemption, and you can work up from there. You could say, well, we
Yeah.
allow these neighborhood solar, like for a subdivision, and if they wanted to have their own
Yeah.
storage that's not connected to the grid, feeding the grid,
Yeah.
and it's 100 or whatever it is, then you can consider other exemptions for whatever level
Right.
you want to permit.
Right, so I think we need to talk about that. So you have a home, you could also have a commercial business that would take a
Mhm.
bigger battery. We don't have much here, but something that takes more energy would need a bigger battery. But is it all based on, right now, whether it's behind the meter, which is attached to your house or your building, versus front of the meter, which is attached to the grid? Is that the concern that we have? Because we could consider saying something like that versus having a size, because the technology is changing. I don't know.
I hear you saying two different things, residential and commercial, and then before the meter and after the meter.
Yeah,
And, I get the residential part, that definitely needs to be defined, like, if I want something in my house, just for my house, but getting back to the subdivision thing, I mean, that could be an option for a subdivision.
yeah,
right? And then behind the meter or
front of the meter.
in front of the meter, that's more
Well,
discussion.
I think George listed 20 kW
Mhm.
as the cutoff max size that would be allowed in this. So I guess what's important to know here is what is first off, this is only for a year. So, if somebody came in and said, I want to do my subdivision and I want to put battery storage in there, it doesn't bother me that they can't do it for a year. Is I guess what I'm saying, is while we're trying to sort through this. But I think one of the key questions is, what is the right size? I think is what everybody's saying, is
Yeah.
that for a house, is 20 kW enough for the get and go, is the only business I can think of. What is the right amount
Yeah.
to last for a year?
Or could we say, instead of a size, because things are changing too, could we say a residence or something like that? Like define what it is, like one residence,
You think
a
it would change that
single
much
residence.
in a year?
Possibly, I don't know.
Because this is based on what others are doing, right? I mean, is this the 20, 25?
Yeah, but again, across New York, they had varying approaches, what
Yeah.
they wanted to limit.
And people can oversize it too. They can oversize their batteries.
They-
20 is pretty limited. I mean,
Yeah.
a Tesla Powerwall is 13.5 kilowatts.
Well, that's,
Yeah.
and I was thinking the same thing, because I have solar panels and I produced 40 today, so.
That's a lot, that's nice.
Yeah, but if you,
20
I
seems
mean, if you
low.
wanna back up your home for a day or two, you need more than one battery.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think it's
So
just,
one battery is 13, you said?
A Tesla Powerwall is 13.5. There are other makers, but they're all in that, 14, 15, 16
Okay.
kilowatt range.
Okay.
so I guess whatever makes sense within an upper limit. Is that 20, is that 40? Well, how do we find that out? Is there a way to, because if you ask a battery guy, oh yeah, 2,000's good, wouldn't you?
Yeah, right. Well, actually, so Maine MREA, Maine Energy Association, there's the R in there.
Renewable, I'm sure.
Yeah, they are starting a storage task force. Similar to New York, nothing as big at all, of course, but they're starting their own group that's gonna be studying these things. So I wonder, I've got a good contact over there. I could reach out and see what she's recommending. We could just try and get some guidance on that. But the idea is for our residents, right? We're trying to permit personal batteries for residences.
Yeah, I mean, someone like Mark who wants to put a battery in, which is a good thing. I mean, given how, reliable the power grid here is in the greater Durham area. So,
But there's guaranteed, well, I don't know anything for sure, but somebody's gotta have a battery in this town.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I have one,
right?
You have one?
So,
You have a Powerwall? Yeah.
yeah,
so
so,
it's 30,
13.5 kilowatts.
right, so
How
it's
big
already,
is it?
it's already happening.
It's like,
It's pretty small. It's like half the size of this table.
yeah.
How long does that power your house? No, I'm just kidding.
Not very long. You can't operate certain things.
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, and
does
just
it
my
cover your swimming pool?
suggestion
Exactly.
is rather than approaching it from the standpoint of what do we want to permit,
What do we-
yeah, what do you want to limit? So you'd start out with saying definitely Gorham-sized facilities. The town isn't ready to deal with something like that. And then work down from there and then determine how low you want to go in the limitation moratorium.
Yeah, I mean, I'd go the other way and just pick a number that if it's 100, even if it's bigger, if it's 5 times what this is, that's still not gonna be do we consider that a major threat to, the concerns we've got is fire, so on and so forth, is just pick a relatively low number that works for people who have battery systems.
One thing too to consider, so all of this stuff about New York is all about a BESS, which is a battery energy,
Storage system.
yes, thank you. That is, like, you wouldn't call your battery, you don't have a BESS, right? Like,
It's not megawatts, it's kilowatts.
yeah, so maybe there's a definition in there too, I don't know.
Is
Yeah, when I
battery,
read this, I'm sorry, John,
Go
but
ahead.
this is like a structure. This is a commercial
Yeah.
structure
Yeah.
that's got rules and regulations of how it should be built.
Yeah.
This is not a power wall in
Right.
your garage,
Right.
right, that requires special training by these folks.
Yep.
This is very different than any
I
other residential
agree.
thing. It's all commercial, like concrete bunker kind of thing with, fire-rated walls and caulking. Yeah, it's very different.
but I think we just need to say, so that you don't run into the confusion of, I wanna put in 100 or I wanna put in two, because, otherwise, we say, well, if it's the size of a container and it's, this, that, or the other thing, I think I'd rather say, here's what's needed for Mike's house or somebody who's slightly bigger, rather than, let's say you can't do best at this. Because is there an intermediate thing that may or may not be of concern to us?
But we are, based on what has been presented to us, it's item number 4 when we start with this moratorium. And it specifically addresses the best. I think it's been addressed based on that. It's basically giving a
Okay.
definition and totally explains it.
That's actually a really good
We're
point.
talking about,
Excellent.
Yeah.
self-contained, interconnected storage units. It talks about best being a facility, so we've already identified it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So I think it's covered.
So this is about BESS and not,
So a individual homeowner is not gonna be considered a best facility.
Are we
in
good
my
with-
interpretation of
Are
this.
we good, then get rid of the 20 kilowatt thing in the back, because it doesn't matter. I mean, you don't need to set a 100 kilowatt or 20 kilowatt, just go with the definition that is here.
Yes, I completely agree. Really good point, Alan. One question for you, George. When you were looking up ordinances from New York, or moratoriums from New York, did they specifically have mention of like, this doesn't have to do with residential or 20 kilowatt? I just wonder, we all know the idea of this, right? That this is about BESS. And then our CEO can understand that too, but I just want to make sure legally we're covered.
Yeah, and the only thing I would caution is that, let's just say Michael adds a second unit in line with the first storage unit. Does that now trigger the definition that we just read in an array? So there could be, again, we need to look at the technicalities here of the legal language, so.
Yeah, we don't want to leave it to, subject to interpretation.
Yeah,
Right.
the more you can spell it out, the better.
Yeah.
And we don't have to resolve this tonight.
Okay.
We
Yeah.
can work on
We've
this
got a
as we
couple
go
months,
forward. This is
right?
just a starting point. You got until probably February to finalize your language. And again, we're talking about taking this to a public input process, and you may get some good input from folks.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking more like November timeframe for a public information
Yeah.
hearing, where
Right.
somebody could come in and said, I'm powering my swimming pool and my workshop and my sawmill and, and everything else, and I need, and I've got them interconnected or.
And last time we did this, you heard from some solar farm installers. They might have some good input into these ideas.
Is there anything that we need to be concerned with the folks that are looking into installing one now?
I have not heard anything for months and months. And again, part of what we want to do is get this out in the public, because I remember from my review of the MMA information that once you go public with your intent to do it, that's a trigger, part of the process of being able to retroactively apply things. So there are no active applications right now that I'm aware of.
Okay, so because we do say that there is.
We say that the town has had inquiries,
We say that, and at least one project is under consideration.
is
for-
under consideration, but that's not an application. We
Oh,
have not-
okay.
We have not received an application.
Okay. Okay, just to go back on what we were just talking about, excuse me, I just looked up New York real quick, and there is a definition, so they spell it out between two tiers, tier 1 and tier 2. Tier 1 is under 600 kilowatts, I believe, which sounds like a lot, but tier 2 is above 600 kilowatts. What they say for tier 1 is that they are permitted in all zoning districts, but subject to the Uniform Code and the Battery Energy Storage System permit, and exempt from site plan review. So it still, I guess, considers them a BESS, but they're not
Yeah.
required for some
Yeah.
huge review, because what they also say is that a BESS is not a small power wall or something that charges your electric vehicle. So like something that you have is off the table. But it does define it that way, in that, like, up to a certain size, these are pretty much to the review and approval of the local CEO per local building code.
Yeah, there's an NFPA that covers it. and,
Yeah.
What code did you, if you could just repeat, not everything.
Yeah, I didn't say
but-
it very well. So,
You mentioned a code, but you didn't say. which.
subject to the uniform code and the battery
The
energy.
uniform code is all it says?
Yep,
It's kind of vague, isn't it?
Yeah, that's not complete.
And again, some of these were from New York, and they have,
That's
that
true.
means something
They
in New
do.
York that it
yeah,
might
the
not
uniform,
mean
yeah,
here.
whatever Maine would be. Uniform code, you're right, that's New York. I don't know what it would be for Maine.
Yeah.
Well, this all, what George put together, which is fantastic, all talks about New York. They've adopted their own code just for this.
Yeah.
They're not using a uniform building code or they do talk about NFPA in a couple of sections, but I think, we need to, I don't know that we want to get into defining a main state code for,
So it's, the
These
uniform
things.
code is, the definition is the New York State Uniform Fire Prevention and Building Code,
yeah,
adopted pursuant to Article 18 of the blah, blah, blah. So it's really, if Maine has a fire prevention,
we just
Code.
follow NFPA.
NFPA, and then our building code.
And there's
So
a
that's
special
what that
one for
is.
batteries. But I don't, you're right, I don't think at this stage, what we're saying is we don't know these answers, and therefore we wanna have a moratorium. It's sort of what I'm saying. So-
Clearly defined.
So what we wanna say is up to this size, however you wanna do it, is okay under the moratorium, because we don't think that's the same risk as above that size.
But I
But the
think,
issue is that size. What is that size?
Yeah, I think that's,
so I think we need to determine what that size should be, so there is guidance for
Yep,
the
I know.
CEO.
I don't argue that at all.
Right.
So, how do we get there from here? I mean, it seems like the one thing that is, that we need for this, and I have another concern, but how do we get to the right size? What's the best way to do that?
Well, because a 600 kilowatt hour, which is what their definition between tier 1 and tier 2 could be, you know, not a huge battery, but could be a good size, like, you know,
What I saw was that it would serve about 30 to 35 homes.
yeah,
Does that sound right?
yeah. Yeah, that sounds about right. So, you know, if you think about that, it's,
But I certainly don't want to restrict an individual homeowner from continuing his business because we have over-limited
yeah.
the capacity.
Well, I guess, so then my question is, at what point does the size of the battery require all of these building code?
Hmm.
You know, it has to be in a bunker, right? Like,
Yeah.
you can put yours in the garage, right? At some
Yeah.
point, when it gets to a certain size, NFPA or the
Something
IBC is
safety.
gonna say, it's gotta be fire rated, right?
Is there
Right.
anyone that can
So-
tell
so-
us that?
Not me. So I guess what I'm thinking is, we punt this to next month. And any other questions we've got as we're going through here, that this is what the information we need to know for the next month, and then figure out the best way to get that. And I don't know if a good solar guy would be able to say, hey, for 90% of your homes, you don't need anything bigger than this.
I would think the CEO should be able to figure that out, Alan.
Yeah.
That really falls under.
Well, that would be a good place to start, to see what he's got, and then
And possibly checking with the state fire marshal's office,
Yeah.
could do that
see
too.
what codes do apply.
You would hope, right.
Yep.
So that's one of the things we're gonna punt until next month, if I'm understanding everybody. Then, anything else that you have?
Yes, I have one more thing. Those were the two. The third one is, I don't know if we should mention the water one, number 14. I think that the rest of what we have in there is substantial. We're definitely listing out a lot of, like, concerns and things we have to look at. The water piece might not even be a concern, so it's almost, I don't even want to put it in there.
Because
because-
these facilities need to have their own fire
No.
suppression system, or?
Yes, exactly, that's not water.
But here's my thought on it, is we're not, we say maybe inadequate, so what we're gonna do is study this. Whether the lack of water is an issue or not.
No, I mean, I think I can get you data that shows that you don't need water.
For any of
For-
these systems.
Like, it's not a limiting factor. If there's a fire, they are going to bring their own other suppression, retardation stuff. They are not gonna wanna use water.
Water doesn't do it.
They don't, like electricity, you don't wanna put,
I've seen it like cool. So,
and in the battery systems, they have a lot of that already built in. It's like, there's a lot to it. I just don't, the water is, just doesn't sit right. But I could be wrong, I guess maybe I'll just ask that we
Well, then
consider
you-
this, and I can maybe send George and everyone some links.
But given 8I, the New York Water Working Group recommended establishing guidance for water supply, including whether water is appropriate for different technologies. So they do consider
Yeah,
it.
so,
And I think what George
Yeah.
is saying, if it is a requirement, we don't have it. That's something we should study. I mean, I don't know that we need.
There's also the issue of the spread of the fire from this facility to other,
yes,
that's
That's a
where the
good
water
point.
would come in,
Yeah.
to
That
contain
is a
it
good
to that
point.
facility.
the spread of
Okay.
it versus
Yeah.
containing it.
Because one of the things they talk about is explosions.
Hmm.
So you could end up with flammable fragments flying to abutting properties and that sort of stuff. That could be
Okay.
an issue for the fire department, to not have water.
It's a really good point. Yeah,
So-
and they do say that last sentence, John, that you were just talking about, including exception for systems to which water should not be applied in the event of fire. So yeah, okay.
Well, and I think a lot of these, we're going to study them,
Yeah.
and we may say, yeah, look at water's not an issue.
Yep,
You know,
for
some,
sure.
so just because it's listed here, I mean, I see this as a list of things we need to think about and be able to answer that we're comfortable Durham can handle safely. And I'm not picking on Chief or any of his guys, but these are in my mind, complicated systems that,
And
that will need extra
they're
time.
saying, in this report, you need experts available 24/7 that can be activated within 15 minutes and arrive on scene within 4 hours and be maintaining constant communication with the local fire departments to tell them what to do and what not to do in
Yeah.
dealing with a fire in one of these things.
Well,
So,
and
that is certainly beyond the capabilities of the Durham Fire Department.
well, those are the kinds of things we write into the ordinance.
Yep,
And say, if we actually move forward in having them, is that's the kind of thing that said, okay, if you wanna do this, you're gonna have to have this kind of stuff readily available to us. And I
Yeah,
haven't,
all on the applicant.
yep,
all
it's
on
all
the
the applicant to
applicant.
say, you know,
Yeah,
this
definitely.
is, you're gonna have to, who's gonna do this for you? You know,
Yeah.
well, we got some expert who lives in Pownell and he's, you know, available. So that, I'm not trying to write it so that we automatically preclude it, but if there's things that we want them, it's kind of like erosion control. You want to build a subdivision, you can put in erosion control. You want to build battery storage, you got to build in this kind of, the fire department may need additional equipment. They may have some kind of special chemical dispenser that we don't have now, and we can't,
I think the applicant will have that special equipment in
Yep.
case,
yeah, but is
not
it,
not the Durham Fire Department.
or does he buy it for him? But I mean, those are the,
Yeah.
yeah, that's,
There you go.
yeah,
Right.
we don't, the town's not gonna buy it, or shouldn't have to buy it.
Because it's not gonna be cheap.
Yeah, nothing is. Um,
Yeah, that was it for me.
So we
Thank you.
because I think a lot of the stuff we are going to study. Mark, did you have anything? Alan,
Nothing additional.
Brian?
I'm good, thank you.
I do have one more, which is the timing of it, which is if we go 6 months and 6 months, that comes out less than the town meeting. So I don't know, maybe I'm worried about something that may not happen, but if there is somebody who doesn't want to follow our ordinances or our land use article, he could, so 1st of April, 360 days takes you up to the 5th of March. If they submit it on the 5th of March, the moratorium expires before we could vote on a final.
Although you could have, and probably would have, a draft ordinance ready for the April 2026 town meeting as part of this, because this isn't gonna start until April of 2025. You'll have a full year, so you will have in that second phase drafted the warrant articles, and if you adopt an ordinance, you can have it be retroactive.
My concern is probably chicken, but it's, if we have the meeting on the 5th of April and the moratorium expires on the 1st of April, there's a window there that they could file on.
Of a few days, but again, if your draft ordinance says it's retroactive, which under Maine law you can do that, that'll cover
That'll
any,
limit-
that'll
that'll limit-
cover any gap. Yeah,
That answered my question.
I think. And again, we're gonna get to the town attorney to
Yep.
make sure.
Well,
of those
retroactive
sorts of
means
things.
previous,
Yes,
right? So if,
Submitted prior to the adoption of the ordinance
the ordinance.
and application. That's retroactive. It applies retroactively from the date of adoption back to a date certain in advance of the enactment. 6 months, year, whatever you do.
okay.
That's my only, is just cover that gap, and if
Yep.
that works, I'm good with
Yeah.
that. I mean, somebody's actually going to come in, who know, this may be much ado about nothing, but it may come in at some other time. Anything else that we need to discuss? So it looks to me like the key item we need is what's the right limit, or how do we limit, the size of stuff? Is it the definition that's in, what is it, paragraph 4 that Alan put out? Will that cover what we're really concerned about? Is there something that's, could you have a best facility that's not interconnected? Those are the kinds of language things that if we
Yep.
go with that kind of language, could you just have one big, container that's full of, stuff? Is that fair, that somehow between now and, you okay?
Yeah.
Um,
I kind of liked where Brian was going with this, like understanding the size of the containment piece. Are we not talking about that right now? Are we talking about the same thing here? Trying to figure out the size to put in?
Yeah, that's what I
Yeah.
did.
Remember Brian asked, like, what is that size limit that the NFPA or whatever requires for containment or whatever? Because that is our concern. Our biggest concern is safety, right?
Yes.
So if that is specified in the code, then that's something to think about.
Yeah, I mean, wherever we would get it from, that would
We get it
A
from somebody
limitation
that reads these codes and can understand these codes. So maybe Alan is a good starting place.
And the state fire marshal's office. So
Yeah.
again, what we're looking to do is get this before the select board and just say that the planning board recommends a moratorium.
Yeah.
And here's a draft of an ordinance to
Maybe
as a
just
starting
highlight that
place. And then we're gonna do a public participation process between now and the end of the year. And we're gonna take input on this, and that may, help define what your limit is gonna be on these. So you may get some experts come in that
Yeah.
are, in the industry, that are working in the area like last time, and they may give you some input to help clarify some of these issues. Again, get input from the fire department, the code officer, state fire marshal's office, and all of those things might help you frame the final draft that goes out to the voters. So you
For the
don't have to,
moratorium.
you don't have to resolve that tonight.
Yeah.
final draft of the moratorium.
Yes. Yep.
I mean, one other option is calling an installer and saying, what are the outliers? What is the typical, installation?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think the experts last time were Juliet, and then there was a guy who sat in the front row who was an installer, as I recall. And it was very knowledgeable.
Right, yes.
Yep.
But I don't know how, I guess for the home-based systems, that's a fairly frequent, the battery installs becoming more common. Okay, so George, I think, what else do you need from us on this?
No, so I will be preparing a report to the select board, and presenting it on September 24th at their second September meeting, along with the next item, which is the resource protection. So I'll package this up into a memo, include the draft language and the New York Fire study, and just say, this is what we're thinking to take out to the public, and get them on board with what we're doing.
Okay,
Yep.
so we checked the block on battery storage. As George says, the next one is resource protection. And the resource protection working team, whatever the title is, has had, I think, 3 or 4 meetings. They've all, been very useful. Your members are Juliet, Alan, and I. Then there's 3 folks that have been coming from the Conservation Commission, all of whom have been very helpful. So I think what George has prepared are, and I'll let George kind of go into in detail, but there have been changes recommended, proposed on the resource protection areas. And I will say that the workshop reviewed 40 or 50 of them at our last meeting. Looked at each one individually. So they have been looked at in some detail. So tonight, we're here to kind of tell you that this is what we would go forward to the select board for their thoughts before it went to public information. And next 2 weeks, the Conservation Commission will do the same thing we're doing tonight and see if that's what they want to send forward. So George, I'll let you update us.
So just today, I finished a report, draft report on the results of the research and discussions that the working group had over the summer, and I've got it up on the screen. So what I'm going to do, I didn't send it out to you because I just finished it today, but I haven't really had a good time, the opportunity to carefully proof it. But what I'll do is just walk you down through. A lot of it's the same illustrations that we've been using, but this has explanatory text with it. So the first, that's the contents is the introduction to the key findings, the town research that led to the 2023 revisions, the past proposal for a two-phased approach. The second heading is the new beginning with habitat data, the separate issue of the buildings restricted by resource protection, the options that the working group looked at for dealing with that, and then the recommendation for a 100-foot development buffer with differential treatments of floodplains, large wetlands, stream and waterfowl wading bird buffers, and then the proposed resource protection district boundaries that result from that. So the key findings, the zoning map was updated in 2023 based on the comprehensive plan recommendations and the natural resources data provided by the state. And during the public participation process, in implementation of that new boundary, the public input indicated significant concerns for the accuracy of the state data and for the impacts of the restrictions on existing homeowners that would then be required to go to the Planning Board or the Board of Appeals. After a review of Durham's data precipitated by some of those concerned citizens approaching inland fisheries and wildlife, they did confirm that their co-occurrence map was inaccurate, and they did a customized study and revised it for Durham. The other issue that overhaul in 2023 did not do was to consider the full impact of placing existing structures into resource protection and whether environmental data supports that type of restriction being placed on those structures. And the two concluding points of the summary are the proposed revisions will remove areas that were erroneously placed based on 6+ co-occurrence, and will also include buffers around the existing buildings to make those buildings now be able to be expanded without going to boards. So,
George?
yeah.
Sorry, one thing as we go, if it's okay,
Yeah.
as we go through it.
Mhm.
The last bullet, we all understand what this is talking about. It's providing relief for the landowners that were impacted by the change that we made. I
Yep.
just wonder if we need to add any language in there so that, and again, I don't know where this is going, if it's just going to select board or the entire everyone, but it's not for all landowners, right? This is just for
Yeah.
the impacted
Yeah.
land.
Yeah, and again, those are the key findings and just a
Yes.
summary, and you'll see as we read through the text, and I'm not gonna read through the whole text.
Yeah.
But you'll be able to, read it and
Yeah.
yeah, make notes of anything like that.
Okay,
Yeah, so this is just my first draft.
yeah.
And then I talk about the research that I did back in 2021 that based on this is that map on the bottom was in a report I did in August of 2022 that proposed a potential resource protection district based on the criteria of the comprehensive plan and the land use ordinance, and then suggested doing two phases. One was to remove the floodplain, which was a significant portion of the town that weren't floodplains were included, and then doing a second phase that would do the type of fine tuning that we're doing right now. That went to, phase one went to a town meeting, got voted down, and then both phases were wrapped into one, and that led to the adoption of the current zoning map with the current resource protection district. And this diagram shows the beginning with Habitat 6+ that was included in that map, and then the updated review by Inland Fisheries and Wildlife, and in those red dot circles are the only places where it reaches the threshold of 6+ co-occurrence of natural resources value. So,
Can you just go back, say
Yep.
that again? What's in red dot?
okay, so in the red dot, the beginning with Habitat, okay, so this was the beginning with Habitat map provided by the state that led to the 2023 plan. And then, yeah, those are, wait a minute. no,
Wait,
that-
2025?
Did I go too far?
No,
Yeah.
no, I'm just pointing out things, sorry. No,
Yeah,
no,
sorry.
you're right, but it says 2025.
I'm going the wrong way here, sorry.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can get back there. Okay, so this is what we got from the state starting in 2018. And up until 2023, that's what we thought was 6+. Pretty much the blanding turtle habitat, I think I got a pointer here. The blanding turtle habitat is this circular area outside of the floodplain wetlands. These are wetland systems, buffers around those. Similarly, on some of these streams, waterfowl, wading bird.
That BWH removed.
That's what was identified as part of 6+ prior to 2024. So then if I can get this to go down right. Okay, so they recalibrated everything for Durham, did a customized analysis, and this is what they sent me as their new analysis for what hit 6+ in Durham.
So maybe having a legend, those red dots is the existing current.
Yeah, I think I
6+.
explained that up above, red circles in map below. So again, you can read
Visually,
it.
this looks like a lot less area
It is, it's
than what's in the previous slide.
1,500
It's
acres.
very
Yeah.
deceiving, not deceiving, it's hard for me to, that's why when I saw this in
Yeah.
the materials here, I'm like,
Yeah.
what is this red dot actually
Yeah, and that's
showing
why I
me?
did the text of explanation of all this, and again, this is the first time anybody's seen it. So it's hard to read it on this, and in this setting.
It's a huge amount, I'm sorry, huge, but
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
a lot of area that's discounted from the previous map.
Yeah,
But there's still, George, correct me if I'm wrong, all those red dots have resource protection.
they're in
inside,
there,
is it
yeah,
other-
they're
Just in the dot though, right?
Mhm. Well,
No,
Well,
they're,
no, they're contiguous with other streams and inland waterfowl
floodplain
habitat.
buffers,
So they would be protected anyway,
yeah.
even if they
This
weren't
is the
6+.
land area, we're not looking at structures, right?
I think it might be helpful, George, if you put exactly what the point system for the 6+, I wonder if that would help people. That, size of the property and inland waterfowl, and, how many points you get for each of those things.
I remember going through that process, but yeah, you're right.
But the next slide, and whenever George gets to it, all those red dots will be covered up. As you can see here, they're all covered up by there's other
They're sti-
reasons.
They're still
that
in resource protection.
Yeah, all of those red dots are in the green here. They're,
Okay.
they're in areas of green. And so the language that you'll see on the last page of this presentation, this report, it says to basically eliminate any areas that are solely resource protection based on 6+. So basically there are 6 criteria in there. If it's just floodplain, resource protection. If it's just stream buffer, outside of floodplains and other, it's still resource protection. If it's just 6+, that gets taken off the map.
And that came from direction with building with habitat, beginning with habitat.
Well, they're not gonna tell you what to put in and put out of resource protection. It's up to the town. But they're saying there's no areas other than those little red circles where you meet 6+. And it's up to you if you wanna take those out.
So we're still meeting 6+, we're just not intersecting with RP.
If something is resource protection solely because of 6+, then it goes off the
Yes.
map. Okay, if it's 6+ and floodplain, it stays in.
Right, but if it's just 6+.
If it's just based there, it's resource protection solely because of the co-occurrence of natural resources values of 6+, then it's gonna come off the map because it's no longer 6+.
And so that was something that we had decided, in my brain, it was beginning with Habitat they removed the Blandings turtle.
Yes.
That's no longer.
Correct.
But then we're going above and beyond that and removing all 6+.
Yeah, because there is no 6+.
They revised other areas too, in addition to the Blandings turtle.
The only places that meet the state standard for 6+ are inside those red dots.
That's right.
Okay, we're saying the same thing.
Yep.
We're
Yeah.
saying the exact same thing.
Okay? Yeah, we can come back.
This is
to-
probably gonna get some questions from
You
the
think?
town and,
Yeah?
but. I'll try to
Okay,
figure it
so
out.
the other issue is the buildings, and again, next Monday, hopefully this audiovisual system is gonna be fixed to give clear images up here. And there's a new bulb for the projector, a wire coming so I can hook up to a laptop here. So hopefully this will be much clearer, and you'll see it when I send you the report. So those purple circles those are areas within the currently beginning with Habitat 6+ that have buildings within them. And so I think if I can read this, 18 buildings will be removed from resource protection with the removal of the beginning with Habitat 6+ mapped areas. Those are those purple circles. The yellow circles, which don't show up real good on this screen, but they're scattered. There are 34 buildings on 20, I think it was 24 properties across town. It was 34 buildings on 26 properties have the same impact from the resource protection. So those are the areas that this next part is going to look at, giving them relief from the restrictions that were placed on their buildings.
This was not part of our package, right?
No, I just
Right.
prepared this today.
Okay.
And so we tried to get at this last year, and how do we give relief to those 26 property owners that have their buildings within the Resource Protection District? And the answer that was given during the public participation process for the drafting was that they can go to the Board of Appeals or the Planning Board, file a conditional use application, do a 30% expansion, or go to the Board of Appeals if they wanted to go beyond 50% with no stated limit. And the criteria for doing it didn't make any sense. So we started to look at making it easier for them to go to the boards, have the code officer approve certain levels of expansions, have the planning board, not the Board of Appeals, do conditional use for those. But we kind of started spinning our wheels on former or current associate member Ian Torgrossa's concerns that those provisions were not legal. And so you're just digging the hole deeper by doing something like this. So then I went back to the drawing board and tried to look at, well, what about taking the developed areas of those portions out? And then that got spinning on, well, how do you define the developed portion of the lot? Is it the building? Is it the yard? Is it the field, the farm field around it? You can't have an objective basis for doing that, so you can't do it. So then, this round, 3 strikes and I'm gonna be out on this one. So I went to the comprehensive plan, and there is an objective basis, scientifically based, of the undeveloped, unfragmented habitat blocks and developed areas defined by beginning with habitat as a starting place for the discussion. And so I looked at that and presented 3 different options for doing that based on clearly identifiable developed areas, objectively based. And the option 1 was to do all of the land within the development buffers identified by beginning with habitat. Second option was to just do a targeted 250-foot development buffer around existing structures, as opposed to all the road network within the town. And the third option was to even scale that down further to address the specific issue that was raised during the public participation process, was just putting a 100-foot development buffer around existing structures, which would then prevent those property owners from having to go to a board to approve an expansion of their existing buildings. So the Resource Protection Working Group over the summer processed those 3 recommendations, including getting direction from the Select Board not to consider option 1, which went beyond the charge of the committee, and came up with the recommendation to go with option 3, which is the 100-foot development buffer around existing structures. So then further refining that, the working group wanted to differentiate between more sensitive environmental resources and less sensitive, floodplains being in the less sensitive category. If people want to build expansions of those buildings in those floodplains and meet all the federal floodplain management, floodplain management requirements for flood mitigation, they should be able to do that, but at the same time, don't open up all those floodplain areas for new development and the problems that are associated with that. Then so there would be, and this depicts a 100-foot building development buffer around those existing buildings on those properties. Then similarly with forested wetlands, anything over 10 acres or larger is a forested wetland shown here. This is up around Stackpole and Auburn Pownell Road, I think. Those existing homes were put in, I don't know how long ago, before this was ever considered. Whatever wetlands may have been there have been altered when those homes were built. And so similarly, this would put a 100-foot development buffer around those existing buildings. And then streams, this is where the committee wanted to be more fine-tuned and said, and this doesn't really show up good on this poor quality screen, but there's a building right there, and about a quarter of the building is in resource protection, which I'm not sure it makes the whole structure non-conforming. You could argue both ways, it's just the parts that are in. But just to clarify, this would, the committee kind of came out saying they can, we will pull the building out of the resource protection entirely, and therefore clearly say it's not non-conforming, and they could expand on either side going away from, but not further compromising the already compromised stream buffer. And the same issue would be for, wrong button, for waterfowl wading bird habitat buffers of 250 feet around emergent wetlands that are used for nesting for these types of waterfowl and wading birds. So this house is located almost entirely within that buffer, and therefore they have to go to the Board of Appeals or Planning Board to get any expansion of that building. So this would just simply pull the resource protection boundary outside of the building perimeter, and thereby allow them to do an expansion in these already developed areas without further compromising the buffer. So that's the research we did over the summer, and that leads to the recommended amendments to the map. And again, this doesn't show very well, but this includes removal of all the beginning with Habitat 6+, that now has come off here because it's not depicted, and those are the circles on those floodplain properties right there. The others are so small you can't even see them on this scale. And the working group did go through all 24 instances, or 26, excuse me, where the properties would be affected, and I think they felt pretty comfortable with this as the proposal. Now, we need to talk about a public participation process on BESS as well as this, but this is where the working group ended up last week.
I do have one comment. Did we, the building with Habitat 6 again, did we mention that we wanted to keep it on the map? Or I can't, so we still have building with Habitat 6+ in town. We still have that, and we're still, it's not that we are removing that as criteria for RP, it's just that
It doesn't show up.
the definition or whatever, it doesn't quite show up, and the definition is now incorporated within an already existing RP layer, right? But there could be a time that building with Habitat 6+ comes out, so I don't know, maybe they find a new species or something.
Yeah.
But also, like some of these overlap, right? A lot of floodplains overlap with streams and wetlands, like there's a lot of overlapping going on here. I don't know why we wouldn't include building with Habitat 6+, even if it is just those little circles that we saw.
Okay, so I'm not proposing to take the language out of the text of the ordinance that says that beginning with Habitat 6+ is a criterion for
Yeah.
resource protection.
Yeah.
But the net effect of it will be the rezone map that
Right.
pulls all areas that don't have anything else off the map. If that's all they've got is beginning with Habitat 6+, the effective result of it is they go away because the only places that it is 6+ is in those other areas. So we'll keep the language in the ordinance, so
It
that
just
if they
doesn't-
do.
Doesn't show up on the map at all.
Yeah.
basically. Doesn't change the map.
Yeah,
So it'll keep it in there as a placeholder that in the event future studies are done.
yeah,
To catalog it, it'll already be in the ordinance, but it will still have to go to the town meeting to get added to the map
Right.
for any property.
If we amend the map, it has to go back to a public code.
I guess I'm so sorry to stick on this, but I just don't understand the building, so all of these items are resource protection.
Yeah.
Right, we have floodplain, we have 10-acre wetlands, we have stream buffers, and we have waterfowl waiting bird habitat. Is building with Habitat 6+ still an RP?
Yes.
Okay, so,
Do you want it listed there?
yeah, why wouldn't we list it? Even if it's small, and it's incorporated in all the other.
Yeah, we can keep it on there.
I
If
just-
you list it, you need to show it. The reason I say that
Yeah.
is, people are gonna say, well, you know, my house is here, why is it RP? I mean, you're gonna have to have a red dot or something, and I wouldn't put a circle, I just put a red dot
Sure.
that says this.
Sure,
That's
and-
my thinking, was which of those areas are, in fact, what color are you gonna use to show the habitat?
Sure, I mean,
How
right
is it
now,
that?
all of these are blended almost, it's hard
Yes,
to
they are.
tell, you know, so
They are,
it's
and
like,
part of the
what's
reason,
adding-
for that, whether it's RP because of it's a buffer on a waterfowl or stream or floodplain, it's the same restrictions.
It's still
apply.
RP, same thing, exactly,
Yeah,
I
and
agree
the
with
other,
that.
the other
Or I-
challenge, I mean, you could do them all in different colors. But I'll tell you, you have a map that'll be totally unreadable.
Right,
And I don't know.
I don't
that-
mind that, I guess I'm just saying, I think we should add, if it is an RP, like a, you know, an item that requires RP protection, I think it should be added to our final map.
Yeah, now the flip side of it is when you go to the public process and you show it up there as a criterion, and you try to explain, well, it's up there as a criterion, but it's not on the map. That'll be the,
Why isn't it on the map? It is on the map.
Well,
it's
it is on the
it's
map, but
just
you
not-
can't see
You can't
it.
see it, I mean.
Right,
it's-
it's superimposed on.
yeah,
other
but just
things.
be
Oh, yeah.
prepared. Some people will attack it because they think you're trying to leave it in there.
Oh, okay, no.
You
that's
follow?
fine.
I
We can deal
think
with
this
that.
is gonna be extremely difficult to explain.
This building
I
with
mean, this,
Habitat
you
6.
know,
Or
I mean,
this
I
would
spent
be-
3 months going through this,
I know.
and it is a tough explanation. And I get that the select board hopefully they've been indoctrinated, or whatever the right term is there, to go through
Oriented.
this. But, okay. We'll leave my personal feeling, but I'll vote on this. But anyway, I think if we try to get in here with people who are looking at it for the first time, it's gonna be really difficult. And the only thing gonna give a damn about is, am I in resource protection?
That's right.
And they don't care if it's 100-year floodplain or waterfall
No.
or
No.
whatever.
We don't even need to get into the details, really.
Yes.
I completely agree with you, but for like a data, technology reference, I don't know why we wouldn't include it. Like,
I mean, I can go either way, but it does open up Pandora's boxes.
Just by adding that one thing.
I think the most hated thing about this map is habitat. I mean, that's, when people are complaining about resource protection, they're complaining about, you know, why did we do it? We didn't have to do it, the state's not making us do it. The state or the government, federal government makes you do all that. It doesn't make you do.
But we got this passed, so this is a whole,
I
we
got you.
got this whole thing passed a couple years ago with the
But when
building
you-
with Habitat
when you-
6+.
When you go back in, that's still going, people are still gonna say,
But the reason, we just have to be clear, the reason we took it out is because the data was wrong. That is why it
except for
came
those,
out.
whatever.
The data, I don't know if I would use the
Not
word
wrong,
wrong.
it changed.
Right.
It changed, the
Right.
turtle
Right.
went,
It's the
you
best
know, it
data we had
Yeah,
at
changed.
the
the
best,
time.
Sorry,
yes,
it's not wrong, it changed.
right.
It's not because we are changing our regulations or requirements, that's not what we're doing, it's just that the
No,
data
that's not what we're doing, but I think
changed.
there's a lot of people who would want it, as part of that discussion, there's
Sure,
gonna be
Yeah.
people who don't want
people are,
anything there. And so, George, so I think that the real change, I'm not sure you can get there with one meeting is my concern, with one public information meeting.
yeah,
And, you know, somebody, my house, when I look at that, there is like an area the size, and maybe it's changed, but the size of that white cupboard, way off in the corner. I don't care. It has no impact on my property. But some of the houses that we looked at were, you know, me and I walk out my back door and I'm in a resource protection area, but they're gonna worry about that, though they're specific ones. And one of the things I want to discuss with George is how do you teach that before that meeting or after that meeting? Because I think you're gonna get whatever number of structures are still, if they're out of resource protection, they'll probably leave as soon as they hear that. I mean,
Yeah.
the meeting, but the 30-something who are still in there, we're gonna have to try to at
Well,
least
they're-
explain it to
well,
them.
they're out. The 30+ people are out, right? This whole
Whatever he said,
thing.
26 parcels or whatever, there's still 26 buildings, or 26 parcels with buildings on them that are in resource protection.
Right.
Or
But
they've
they
been
were-
moved slightly, been moved slightly.
But they
Yes.
were before.
Yeah, and so,
Right.
that's the sell, is how are you going to do that?
I think that could be another town meeting, possibly.
How many were in before the change? Was it more than 26?
50-something, I think.
Well, that's a win, man.
Wait, so I think
Yeah,
the
for
thing,
those 50.
well, I think the thing to highlight is you're not adding anybody in to resource protection that's not currently in resource protection. And you looked at a way of giving relief to everybody that has an existing
Yep.
building in
Totally.
resource protection.
Spin the
Yeah.
positive.
Main speaker for the public
Let's not-
hearing.
Don't focus on the negative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my point, George, what we're talking about, is that's just gonna be, it's going to be a challenge, because I think what people are gonna come to do is, where's my house? You know, am I in resource protection? And those who, we say, yes, look, here's your wall, and this is where resource protection begins, that will raise questions. Because, you know, well, I don't wanna build to, you know, you're gonna have those kinds of questions. So I think it's just gonna be a really tough sell, and I really think that somehow we're gonna have to get to the individual, those who are left in resource protection, we're gonna have to show them how we proposed taking their building out, and this is your house, and there's still, you know, there's one guy who is beating the horse that says, that's not, I don't think that's a stream, don't put it in there.
Yeah, I think we're talking about
That's
two
a
different
separate-
things.
that's a separate
It's two
discussion.
different things, and we need to be straight and narrow about what we're doing here.
Yeah.
We are talking about giving relief to the people that were impacted by our recent change. That is
Right.
what we're doing.
I think that's a secondary.
The
subject.
secondary is.
But you're gonna have to explain that. My point is, when you present this, it's gonna be part of the questions and presentations. I agree with you 100%, so there'll be.
I don't know, I think, like, do we want to open that up?
Well,
Like,
you do.
with our presentation, or do we want to see,
Well, this is the state mapping that indicates that this is a stream and these are wetlands and this is the best information we have.
I-
this
I
is what was
hear-
voted years ago?
I hear everything everybody's saying, but they're gonna wanna know what's happened to my property, and why did you just draw it right on my property line? I mean, those are the questions that
That
I
should
would
have come
have.
up years ago,
What's
honestly.
that?
Like, weren't, those people were impacted years ago.
No, because the last time we updated it was what did we do this?
Whenever
2
it
years
was,
ago,
yeah.
but now they're hearing the street, and I'm playing devil's advocate to an extent here, is George, somebody just needs to be able to explain, what does that mean to my property? We don't wanna go through 30 of them on whatever time we have a public hearing. So I'm talking more about the presentation than I am about changing. I'm not talking about changing what we've
Yeah,
done.
yeah,
But we're
yeah.
gonna mail these things out to the affected property owners, I assume.
Well, what we're planning to do, and that deals with another part we gotta discuss tonight, is the public participation process. So if you do a meeting, say, first week of November, right after or second week after the election, what we would do is, number one, I'm starting to identify every property that's affected by this. Whether they're being pulled out of, beginning with Habitat 6+, or whether the boundary is gonna be changed, as we've discussed with the second part of this. Every one of those property owners will get a postcard that will alert them to this is going to be discussed on November, whatever it is, and that the information is on the website, and if they have questions, contact the town planner like we did last time.
And I
So
think,
I anticipate a lot of people will be contacting me, and every time they do, I will provide them with the details of their property, just like we did last time.
and I think you word it in such a way that, we're trying to make their life better. This is not, we're pulling their buildings out of resource protection. I think we just have to make that clear.
Yeah, and
To allow it-
to John's point, I think some people will say, doesn't go far enough. I want it
Yeah,
off
I
my
mean, that's-
property.
You always
I want it
wanna
off my
have that.
property completely.
Yeah, I don't think that's a street, yeah, you're so, that's why you have a vote, is
Yeah.
if you think this is still wrong, then get
Yeah.
your friends to vote on the
Yeah.
first Saturday.
Sorry. We're not voting on whether this is right or wrong. We're not voting on whether RP is right or wrong here. We are voting on these 30 impacted properties. So telling somebody, if you don't think this is right, don't vote yes on this, is not right.
It's just gonna hurt these
It's
30
going,
people.
exactly. This has to be a separate thing.
But if those 30 people get up enough people, one of the things that got
Then they
defeated.
won't get,
They won't, exactly, that's all
hurt
part of
themselves.
the process. And I think it's sellable, if that's the right term, but we just have to be prepared. Because I think there will be, and then playing devil's advocate, I think there will be strong oppositions to not taking everybody out. If you go with the first option up there, there's a lot of land around every structure. And that's kind of what the state, if I'm not mistaken, that's kind of what the state says. Option one is okay with us, this stuff doesn't have to be, we consider this developed land.
Option 1, 2, and 3 are supportable by the comprehensive plan. And beginning with Habitat in the state, are not gonna tell you which to do, if any. Like I say, that's entirely up to you.
No, I got you, I'm not talking about, putting them in, I'm talking about taking stuff out.
Yeah.
Because we elected not to use option, we did
Again,
the
they're not
workshop.
they're not gonna say you need to take it out. They're just gonna say, this is the data.
It doesn't
you-
have to be in, it's maybe, this is,
Yeah.
we consider this developed land. So, those are the things that I think people are gonna wanna discuss, and so, getting the postcards out there, setting the date, which we probably need to start talking about here, set a date for when we're gonna do the general meeting, and hopefully everybody will have, who has questions, will come in and see George.
And I think we do need to be clear on speaking rules and our message at these things.
You wouldn't let me talk to the select board, so I'm sure you can find somebody, Mark or somebody else who you think is a better person
No, I'm
to
just
sell
saying, like,
that.
I think it is gonna be important, the messaging.
Sure.
Not saying, John, you can't do it, but, I think we all need to be aligned on this, and whatever, the direction we're going in here, and we need to be clear with what this is, and if things come up, what this isn't. And that there is time later on to get into this further, but this is not something. It is something for 30 people, but not for everybody.
I think the way
Right.
we
Well, I mean, if I haven't made it clear, I am in favor of going with option one. And at some point in time, whether it's at the public information meeting or otherwise, or at the town meeting, I will state that. So if people, wanna, and I'm not trying to hold up those.
I don't know, can we talk about that?
You as an individual can do that.
As an individual, not as a planning board.
That's what I mean.
No, no, I'm
You have
not,
to be careful with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm
And the direction
saying.
that we're getting from the select board.
I agree. I mean, that's, that's why what George has come up with is this particular thing. And I may change my mind, after the quite truthfully, I'll sit through the public information hearing, and if people are not against what we're doing here, I would probably go with them. I mean, it doesn't impact me personally, so what is it gonna do to others in the town is my concern. And I would not speak as the chair of the planning board,
Okay,
and if in opposition to this.
okay.
Just to
So
see,
I think it's wise to consider that all 30 or 26 people might be upset, but I don't think everybody will be, all of those landowners will be upset.
Wait, why would they be upset at all? If anything, we're helping them. It's the others that you're thinking are gonna be upset, right?
No, if we've used option one, nobody's RP would begin at their back door.
So we're not presenting option one.
I know.
We're voting on option
Exactly.
3 or 4,
That's
whatever
exactly.
it is.
But my point is, there was another option that we haven't gone forward with, and as a private citizen, I was supportive of that. So I'm not gonna get up in the public meeting, between the workshop and whatever people here said, this is the way we wanna go. And that's the way we'll go. At least to present it to the town.
A couple of comments. The beginning with habitat maps, from what I remember, there were residents in the Runaround Pond area that were most vocal about how it impacted their property. I don't remember who went to the Board of Appeals, if it was one of those residents or not, but I want to understand what the Board of Appeals granted relief from. Was it 100 foot? Was it 250 feet? I want to make sure that we're consistent with whatever they granted relief from, and so that we don't get
Yeah.
bit later with, hey, the Board of Appeals allowed this, but now you're only giving me 100 feet. What is that?
Well, George can correct me, I mean, what the Hagers did specifically was they paid,
Around pond.
yeah, they paid, and the boat loss of Runner, they paid, I don't know, 3,500, $5,000 to have an expert come in and say, there are no blinding turtles, you should not be in resource protection. And I think it granted their entire parcel,
Because that was that big circle. That's gone.
yes.
Blanding's turtle.
But that's what the appeals board gave them blanket approval on their land, because it was just blinding turtle or habitat.
But that
plus.
wasn't just like a blanket, you can have this. That was because the data showed it wasn't there
Yeah.
anymore. Well, I think,
So because we've removed the blanding turtle part from all of the equation, we're pretty much covered with that? That was the appeal, was to remove the blanding
they did their own
turtle?
study.
Or was it,
They did their own
Yes.
study and
Okay.
it found that.
Yes.
But yeah, around pond, that was the turtle mainly. There's still, resource protection around.
There's other
Run Run-
areas, yes.
Yeah,
They
It was
didn't
an
release-
equestrian, it was an equestrian center too, that they went to the appeals board, and I think they had an expert came in.
They paid for I'm
that they
pretty
paid
sure,
for,
wetland study.
And
or whatever
they
it was.
revised it was wetlands. So they got relief because someone on the ground, a biologist on the ground said, the wetland border is slightly inaccurate.
okay.
and that is,
So options 1, 2, and 3 would not contradict this appeals
Mm-hmm.
decision?
That's my understanding.
All right, fantastic.
I liked where you were going with that though. Like, what is the buffer they're giving versus what we were proposing, right?
Yeah.
Like, I
They
like
they
that.
just said, you're not in.
Right.
And other people can do that. Somebody who's still
Yeah.
in resource protection could say, I'm gonna hire an expert to tell you that the stream is not there. And it's gonna be 200 feet that way, and so I get an extra,
Which is fine, that's their, right, like, when we presented this in town meeting.
Yes.
The outlet was, go to the Board of Appeals
Yes.
if you have an issue.
Yes,
right?
yes.
And
Right.
This particular landowner did that?
but, we also
Share
tried to
relief and-
make it easy so people didn't have to. If,
That's the whole intent of this.
Impacted
is
by
to-
what-
is to help
You
people
can-
out, so.
Right, you can build a little bit around your property without having to spend several $1,000s to get a specialist come in and say yay or nay.
Yep.
Yeah, and I'd like to talk a little bit more about that if we can, but just, can we go back to the building with Habitat 6+? I don't know, do we need a vote or talk about whether we want to add it in? Show it on this map, the final resource protection map?
What's it do, I guess the question is, do we want a little red dot? Or some little, I mean, if it's gonna
Yeah.
be green, then there's no sense doing it,
Okay,
because.
sure,
you know,
any
if-
color,
If it's something different,
yellow.
which,
I just think you're gonna be really throwing confusion, unnecessary
I agree.
confusion
I
into the
tend-
process.
I agree.
that's my feeling
If you just
too.
leave it off, really, all we're talking about is changing the map. We're not talking about changing the ordinance. The
Right,
language on
right,
beginning
right.
with Habitat 6+ will still be in the ordinance. Putting it on the map says there's some on there on the map, when there's the only spots.
There is some, but it's minimal.
And it's hidden, I mean,
Right?
it's
That's-
very.
that's
It's
true. It's a true comment.
inconsequential.
It is, yes.
Because those areas are
It's already
already in
covered, yes.
resource protection.
Sure,
So I just think putting it on there is just a flag to say, let's make this a controversy.
okay.
Mark,
I
your
don't-
thoughts?
But are there any other restrictions? More restrictions in beginning with habitat than
No,
resource protection?
they're all the
All
same,
okay.
all the same.
All right.
So is the
And
consensus,
Juliet, if you want that, put it out as a motion, let the,
Well, no,
Vote
I mean,
on it.
I don't want to make it more confusing. If we're gonna hurt
Well, I don't
ourselves
either.
by this, then fine. But
Right.
what I'm saying is that, did our last map had it? It was a lot bigger, building.
Yeah,
with-
because there was so
there was
much
a lot
on, there was
more of it.
1,500 acres on
Right.
there.
So there's a lot more, we took it off, and we don't want to keep it on because we don't want to confuse people.
Right.
so it's, those, I forget, 6, whatever they were, those areas of resource protection, doesn't matter if there's, you know, dark minnows or whatever is there, it is resource protection for floodplain, wetlands, stream buffer. The more we can simplify this, the better it's going to be.
But the state gave us an award for this, shouldn't we at least recognize it somewhere?
And then also another point is, if it's listed in the ordinance, right, we still talk about building with Habitat 6, it's listed in the ordinance, but it's not talked about on the map.
It's okay, because
Okay.
those are
Okay.
criteria that are listed there in the ordinance, but before they can be implemented, the map has to be changed. So just, you know, not all streams have the buffer, only the ones that are shown on the map.
Yeah, right.
Maybe instead of drop beginning with Habitat 6+ co-occurrence, maybe new map, I don't know,
No,
you can just drop.
All
my
we're doing
feeling
is-
is, all we're doing is not including it in the legend.
Yeah,
That's
I
all.
know.
But you've got drop beginning with
It's
Habitat.
in there, it's in the map.
You've got
It's
it
just
under the
not
heading.
showing that it's in the map,
No,
right?
it says drop beginning with Habitat 6+
Oh,
co-occurrence
oh.
areas. That's the effect of this map.
this map will make people a lot happier because it's gone. If
And you're saying get rid of the
This
text.
isn't the, is this the, no, this isn't the
Because
final.
you're not really dropping it, it's a new, the 6+ co-occurrence is much, much smaller. You're not really
And it's-
dropping
and
it.
it's actually including it.
It's included.
That's actually a really good point. I didn't even see that piece. Can you go to
Okay.
the final one? Would you
Yeah.
mind? Okay, so we're not saying drop.
Right.
So this is what people are gonna see, right?
The final
The
result.
final, yeah,
Yep.
Okay.
okay. All right, good. I'm okay. You guys, it's fine.
Yeah.
I will, I just,
Are you,
I aired my thought.
are you good with, and thank you.
Yes.
You were kind enough to listen to mine.
I think it's a semantic thing.
You're good, but you're good with your folks in 2 weeks to, okay, are we gonna have a problem because they go on the 21st? I think something like that.
That sounds,
I guess I'm asking is a conservation commission, we as a planning board are saying we're okay with this.
yeah, I think we were all, I don't think there's. gonna
You
be
don't need to
consent.
do anything, George, when he sends this forward, can say the planning board and the full planning board and the conservation commission are supportive of this.
Yeah. I
You
think
don't
so.
have to say except for John Talbot, George, you can just say.
George, when are you presenting to the
put
select board?
put that in bold.
The
makes
town manager's
if they let
putting
me
it
talk,
on
I
the
guess.
agenda for September 24th.
24th?
I mean, we talked about it at our last meeting and there was.
Oh, that's, if you're good, I just wanna make
Because we
sure.
met after we had the resource.
Oh, we
protection
did? Oh,
meeting.
okay,
Yeah.
good.
So,
You guys are good.
I do have one containment suggestion,
For the storage?
No.
Oh, okay, all right.
Are you
I've got
ta-
so many things.
Are you talking about containing me, George? Well, go ahead.
Well, I'm concerned, you're having a discussion, how are we gonna deal with this, how are we gonna deal with that if they bring that up? I think the safest and simplest response is to just say, this was the charge of the select board
Yeah.
to the working group.
Blame them.
It
Yeah.
was simply to deal with the beginning with Habitat 6+ data and to grant relief to property owners whose buildings were put into resource protection. Anything outside of that is beyond the scope of our work. Now, it's not that you shouldn't pursue that, we just can't do it as part of this because we're not authorized to. So just go to the charge.
Yep.
And I strongly urge to say, well, if you don't like it, vote against it. That's not a good, that's not a good.
100%,
It's never a good
100%.
message to tell people.
No. But also, George, when you
Because you're
say,
telling them how to vote, and that's just not a good idea.
when you say our charge was to evaluate or to address the 6+, it's really to address the change in data. Because since day one,
Yep.
our thing has been, we're standing
Data,
against this
right.
data. So that is,
Yep.
it's really not, I wouldn't even just say 6+, I would just say a change in data based on,
Reassessment
It's more
of where
refined.
6+ is
Yeah,
in the.
but the specific charge from the select board did mention that.
yes,
because it was
but
such
they
a
were
big issue.
talking about the
Yeah.
change in data, so.
But the
yeah.
point is, stick with the charge, that's how you contain it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think the consensus is to send it forward to the planning board with the select board with the
Yep.
blessing of the planning board and the conservation commission on the 24th. And then George brought up the point of, we then have to do, how are we gonna, so that's the 25th of September.
24.
Well, maybe the 25th is before you can do, I mean, my point is we can
Oh,
start
I
on the
apologize.
25th.
Yeah.
But how do we want to go forward with that? George, you're going to send out,
So
cards.
you'll schedule, just like we did last time, schedule a public informational meeting. We will send out a postcard to all affected property owners. You're probably gonna do both Beth's and this on the same night, I'm assuming. You might wanna do this first, and then give plenty of time for that, assuming that Beth's is not gonna generate a lot of input and interest.
did tonight.
Yeah. So anyway, what we will do is same format as last time, to do a presentation, explanation of the project. Hopefully if you public officials or appointed officials can kind of lead it off, I'll try to just deal with
Yeah,
the
I think that's fair.
technical
Then-
explanation.
So to be kind of,
presentation.
and I think that the resource protection would be the working group versus
Yes.
the planning board.
Yep, yep.
Because we're not going to,
Yes.
so it would
Right, let
be,
the
I like that
Conservation
idea.
Commission take the lead on that one, that would be good.
what's that?
Yeah, so I'm cataloging everybody that is affected
gonna
by
block
this,
me.
and we'll be sending out a postcard just saying there's a meeting, check the website, and I'll be preparing all the website stuff. So I think doing it the second week of November will give us time to get ready for that. And we also talked about doing some kind of a display at the election.
Either, display or just a little
Yep.
sign that says November, whatever day it is, November 10th.
No, I think we can do a display
Okay.
that'll help people know what it's about.
And then try to encourage people to come over. We did that for affordable housing and about 10 people came by. But it's 10 people who get the word out.
Well, this is gonna be a very busy election, like very,
Oh, yeah.
you know,
Oh, yeah, the select board has one or two things they want to, talk about as well.
okay.
So, you want to pick a Tuesday, Wednesday in November? Are we ready to at least throw something out there?
For the public information?
Public information meeting.
Well, we have our meeting on the 6th, right?
I think we're probably, I hope, assume, whatever, that we'll have two land use, preliminary final plan stuff in that start.
So November 13th would be a target.
Does that work? I'm pulling my
It's
calendar
the
up.
second Wednesday of November.
Well, Wednesday seems to be good because that does not conflict with the select board because they're the second Tuesday.
Hold on one second, I'm gonna
So we could get again, it would have to be televised, or it should be televised.
Yeah, the 13th. Anyone have any issues?
I'm still waiting for I don't think I do, but I'm still waiting for it.
Works for me.
Of course, you guys
We'll
are probably
need
all
to check
hoping
with the
that I can't be
RP
there.
though. The RP working group.
Yeah, I can make it, but I can ask Sam and Jess.
Okay.
Yeah, if you would, just, would tentatively set it for the 13th.
Okay.
My phone's not gonna open, so, 6:30 here. George, if you'll get them to set up so it'd be RP, we lead off with the RP working group, followed by the planning board on battery storage.
Are folks able to meet earlier than 6:30 or no? I just wonder if we should, or is it harder for people actually maybe, if it's earlier?
It's not for me, sometimes, Mike, your folks are, flying in at 6:25, 27, 35.
Sam and Jess usually can't make it too early.
It's
Till
a
6,
challenge.
okay, then there we go.
I think we can, we'll control the flow of the meeting so that, we don't have to listen to the same thing. If somebody says, I want to know what happens to my property, get with the town planner,
Right.
separately. We don't need to go into, and we probably need to decide which examples we're going to show too, so that people don't get hung up on that.
So when do you anticipate those postcards going out?
Probably 2 weeks before that.
Okay. So the reason I was asking that, see, wondering whether they would have time, or you would have time, for them to go into the detail prior to the public meeting.
Yeah, and you don't want to send it out too far in advance, because then people forget about it.
Forget about even going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, I can be pretty responsive if I've got all these
Well,
ready to roll.
Yeah, good.
Okay, I think we've killed those two. George, did you really want to talk about historical? I mean, I'm not sure we've got anything to say. The short version is the select board is
hold
going
on.
to discuss
Sorry,
their,
John, can we talk more about what we were talking about a little bit before, about when, or not if, but when the public does come to us for RP issues or other environmental issues that aren't addressed by this? What is our recommendation or thoughts on messaging for that?
Well, are we empowered to address them?
So
I
the
guess
s-
that's my first question.
The select board really has the decision-making, but we are the ones
I
that
don't think
could
it's,
see
I'm not
it.
sure there's anything we can do.
I don't think so.
I mean, if the town approves the plan, that's the plan. I mean, they can certainly, stand up on the floor and say, I want to, this is not fair to me, and they can do all that they can go through that process. But I don't know that it's the planning board's charge or ability to make changes. We're not going to sit there and say, oh, okay, Mr. Talbot, you're worried about your corner of your land, we'll take that off the thing.
Right, right.
I mean,
No, no.
I think you live with what's presented and that's voted on is, again, until the town meeting, they can get up and say whatever they want.
Yeah, no, I guess that what I was talking about is, George, your email about,
What is a stream and what is not a stream?
yeah, about the landowner that is asking about a stream that's on his property. Right now, the options are to go to the appeals board, right? And is that gonna be sustainable? Is that okay with the appeals board to go? I think you mentioned that, they don't have a wetland scientist on the appeals board,
Well, you have to pay for it.
so they have to get it done
My
first.
feeling, correct me if I'm wrong, is the Hagers did, I don't want to throw their name out there, but they paid money to have a wetlands guy come out and say this isn't, or wildlife guy, I guess, or a combination of them, come out and say that. And that's, anybody who wants to argue and say that's not really wetlands, that's not floodplain, that's not whatever it may be, they're gonna have to hire,
Okay.
they will have to do that individually.
And I agree with that. I think, George, where you might have been going is that the Board of Appeals might give them relief without the data? No, you weren't going there.
No, the argument was who should pay for that. And some landowners think that the town, if it's gonna put the regulations on, should be
I
paying
see, I
for the
see, I
environmental
see,
studies.
that's what you were saying there.
And some towns, as I pointed out to you, Juliet,
Yeah.
have done studies.
Yeah,
Spent hundreds of thousands of dollars going out and surveying
Mm.
properties to identify clearly where wetland boundaries are, for like these large 10-acre wetlands, if you're gonna include them.
yeah,
Couple of problems with that is getting taxpayer support for the
Yeah.
funding. And the other problem with it is then landowners generally don't want you going on their property identifying restrictions.
Right.
So it's just a
Yeah.
formula for disaster.
yeah.
It
So-
is- It's not workable.
So yeah, I guess my recommendation is to keep going the way it's going.
Yep.
The Board of Appeals requires wetland delineations or whatever to be done, paid
Yep.
for by the applicant.
Yes, at the time of development, because if someone's not developing their property, just having it
Yeah.
on the map doesn't do
Right.
anything to their useful enjoyment of the property.
Right. Yep. Okay, great.
Yep.
Subject closed, thank you.
You sure? Okay, so the 13th of November, we'll have the
Target date.
joint public information meeting. Between now and then, because I don't think we'll have another meeting, I said we have October. October, we can talk about how to present at the election, at the, what to put up there. My experience with when I was there the whole day for the election for affordable housing, and George did a really good job of simplifying it, but it still wasn't. So we'll have to try to simplify the info as best we can. And then somebody's gonna volunteer to probably stay there and try to explain it. I'd be happy to do that if you'd like.
I'm willing to do it. I don't know about the 24 hours, but
Oh, not
I
24
could do a
hours.
shift.
Oh,
It's
at
8 to
the
8.
voting?
Mhm.
Oh, I would love to too. Yeah, shifts sounds great.
Yeah, I
And
think
then
it
George,
did
you
help.
can be there the whole time.
What's that?
You can be there the whole
Yes.
time,
Like
if you
that?
want to.
Well, it'll be a pro and a con side, you know. I've got Juliet all fired up now. It does help to sit, because you couldn't just, and George simplified it well, but it wasn't as simple as just reading the thing. So I guess we can talk about how to do that at our next meeting, which may or may not be busy with the Bowie Hill, Ruby Lane, so on and so forth. So I will be happy to accept a motion to
Did
adjourn.
you want to talk about historical when I interrupted you? Okay, great.
No, I wanted to say we're not gonna talk about it.
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second,
Anybody want to discuss it?
no.
If not, raise your hand. It is passed. Did you want to vote on that? But
I don't think I get to.
we did let you speak. I mean, Sam's gonna be really mad.
Or is that just?
It's one of them.
Just one, just two.
The inside joke there is that I confused those two after like 5 meetings. I have yet to get them right. Although I did get them right the last meeting, and I called Juliet. So I asked I had my annual physical today, and the doctor was not going to see me.